Ma'am, license and registration, now.
Officer, I'm having contractions. I need to get to the hospital.
I need your documents first. You're not going anywhere until—
I'm 8 months pregnant. Premature labor. I'm an ER doctor at
Step
Detroit
out of the
General.
vehicle. I said now.
The babe, please. The baby's coming. The baby's coming.
Racist cop arrests pregnant black ER doctor during premature labor contractions. Faces instant karma when supervisor recognizes her. For Officer Valentina Martinez, the flashing red and blue lights of her patrol car on that cold February night meant she was in control, documenting her version of events with the body camera mounted on her chest. But those lights weren't just illuminating a routine traffic stop. They were about to expose a catastrophic failure of judgment that would end her 12-year career in less than 48 hours. The small device on her uniform blinked steadily, recording everything. She believed it was her shield, her protection against false accusations, her evidence that she did everything by the book. Tonight, that little red light would become the instrument of her downfall. Dr. Amara Johnson had finished her shift at Detroit General Hospital at 10:47 p.m. on Thursday, February 14, 2025. She was 34 weeks pregnant, 6 weeks from her due date, and exhausted from a grueling 12-hour shift in the emergency department. As an ER physician, she'd spent the evening treating everything from heart attacks to car accident victims to overdoses. Her feet ached, her back throbbed, and she was looking forward to nothing more than going home, putting her feet up, and maybe getting a few hours of sleep before her body woke her again with the constant demands of late pregnancy. She was still wearing her teal hospital scrubs with her stethoscope draped around her neck and her hospital ID badge clipped prominently to her chest. The badge read clearly, Dr. Amara Johnson, M.D., Emergency Medicine, Detroit General Hospital. She had changed out of her white coat, but kept the scrubs because they were comfortable, and frankly, she was too tired to bother changing into street clothes. Her husband, Marcus, was out of town on business, and her mother had offered to stay with her for the week, worried about her being alone so late in her pregnancy. Dr. Johnson had laughed off the concern. She was a doctor, after all. She knew her body. She knew the signs of labor. She had 6 weeks to go, and everything at her last prenatal appointment had been perfectly normal. As she drove down Woodward Avenue at 11:14 p.m., she felt the first contraction. It wasn't painful, just a tightening sensation across her abdomen that lasted about 30 seconds. Braxton Hicks contractions, she told herself. Practice contractions. Completely normal at this stage of pregnancy. Nothing to worry about. 5 minutes later, another one came. This one was stronger. She gripped the steering wheel a little tighter and breathed through it the way she'd learned in her prenatal classes. Still, she wasn't alarmed. False labor was common. She'd get home, drink some water, lie down, and they'd probably stop. Then came the third contraction, and this one made her gasp. Sharp, intense, radiating from her lower back around to the front of her abdomen. Real labor. Her medical training kicked in immediately, analyzing the situation with clinical precision. Contractions every 5 minutes, increasing in intensity. She was having her baby, tonight, 6 weeks early. She needed to get to a hospital, now. She was only 10 minutes from Detroit General, where she worked, where her OBGYN practiced, where her medical records were, where her colleagues would take care of her. She pressed slightly harder on the accelerator, not speeding, but moving with purpose. She turned on her hazard lights, signaling that this wasn't a normal drive. At 11:17 p.m., Officer Valentina Martinez spotted the vehicle with hazard lights flashing. In her 12 years with the Detroit Police Department, Martinez had developed what she considered a sixth sense about vehicles that looked suspicious. And to her, a car with hazard lights driving through this neighborhood at this time of night was worth checking out. She hit her lights and pulled in behind the Honda Accord. The vehicle pulled over immediately, which Martinez noted. Sometimes that meant cooperation. Sometimes that meant guilt.
She'd decide which after she approached the vehicle. Martinez was 38 years old, a patrol officer who had never advanced beyond her current rank despite multiple attempts at the sergeant's exam. She took pride in her work, prided herself on being thorough, on not letting anything slip past her. She saw herself as a guardian of the community, someone who didn't let people get away with things just because they had excuses. She was also, though she would never have admitted it even to herself, deeply influenced by racial bias that she'd absorbed over her years in law enforcement. When she saw suspects, her assessment of threat level, her level of suspicion, her willingness to believe what they told her, all of these were unconsciously shaped by their skin color and her learned prejudices. As she walked towards the vehicle, her body camera activated automatically, as it was designed to do during traffic stops. The red light blinked. Recording began. The timestamp read 23:17:32. Martinez approached the driver's side window and immediately noticed the driver was a black woman. The woman's window was already down, and Martinez could see she was visibly pregnant and wearing what looked like medical scrubs. A stethoscope hung around her neck. But what Martinez saw wasn't an obviously pregnant healthcare worker potentially in distress. What she saw was a black woman in the kind of scrubs that anyone could buy at a uniform store, possibly trying to use pregnancy as an excuse to avoid a ticket, or worse, possibly involved in something criminal and using the medical appearance as a cover. This was the moment where Martinez's implicit bias overrode both her training and her basic human empathy. In her mind, this traffic stop wasn't what it appeared to be on the surface. This required investigation.
Dr. Johnson looked up at the officer, her face already showing signs of strain. Another contraction was building. She could feel it. She had maybe 30 seconds before it hit. "Ma'am, license and registration," Martinez said, her tone professional but flat. "I need to see your documents." "Officer," Dr. Johnson said, her voice tight, trying to remain calm and clear. "I'm having contractions. I'm in premature labor. I need to get to Detroit General Hospital. It's 10 minutes from here. Please." She gestured to her pregnant belly, to her scrubs, to her hospital badge, all plainly visible. Everything about her appearance screamed medical professional, pregnant, emergency. Martinez looked at the badge briefly, but didn't really see it. She'd seen plenty of fake IDs, fake badges, fake credentials in her career. People tried everything. And this woman's nervousness, her urgency, her insistence on needing to leave, Martinez interpreted all of it not as signs of a medical emergency, but as signs of someone trying to avoid proper procedure. "Ma'am, I stopped you for erratic driving with your hazard lights on. I need to see your license and registration before you go anywhere," Martinez said, her voice carrying the first edge of impatience. "License and registration now." The contraction hit. Dr. Johnson's body tensed involuntarily. Her hand flew to her belly, gripping it as pain radiated through her abdomen. She tried to breathe through it, but a small gasp escaped her lips. Her eyes closed briefly as she focused on managing the pain. Martinez saw a woman who suddenly wouldn't look at her, who was gripping her stomach in what looked like exaggerated distress, who was putting on a show. "Ma'am, I need you to keep your hands visible," Martinez said, her tone sharpening. "License and registration. Third and final time I'm asking." Dr. Johnson's eyes opened, and for the first time, fear mixed with the pain on her face. This officer didn't believe her. This officer wasn't going to help her. This officer was going to detain her while she was in active premature labor. "Officer, please," Dr. Johnson said, her voice strained and desperate. "I'm not trying to avoid anything. I'm a doctor. I work at Detroit General. I'm having my baby right now, early. This is a medical emergency. Please, you can follow me to the hospital. You can verify everything there, but I need to go now." She reached for her purse to get her license, but her hands were shaking, and the movement was slow because another contraction was building. Martinez saw reaching and delay. She saw non-compliance, and in her mind, this confirmed her suspicion that something wasn't right about this stop. "Ma'am, step out of the vehicle.
Martinez commanded, her hand moving toward her belt in a gesture that suggested authority and the possibility of force. "Out of the vehicle, now!" Dr. Johnson's eyes widened in disbelief and terror. "I can't get out. I'm in labor. Can't you see that? Look at me. I'm wearing hospital scrubs. I have a hospital badge. I'm 8 months pregnant." Her voice was rising now, panic overtaking the careful calm she'd been trying to maintain. She pointed to her belly, to her badge, at the stethoscope, at all the evidence that was right in front of the officer. Martinez saw what she interpreted as hysteria and defiance. "Ma'am, you're refusing a lawful order. If you do not step out of this vehicle right now, I will physically remove you. Do you understand?" The body camera captured everything. The angle from Martinez's chest showed Dr. Johnson's face perfectly. The genuine pain, the fear, the disbelief, the desperation. It showed her pregnant belly, impossible to fake. It showed her hospital badge, her ID, her stethoscope. It showed her scrubs with the hospital logo. It showed every piece of evidence that should have told any reasonable person that this was exactly what the woman said it was, a medical emergency. Dr. Johnson made a decision in that moment. She would comply, get out of the car, show the officer her ID, do whatever was necessary to end this nightmare as quickly as possible so she could get to the hospital. She couldn't fight, she couldn't argue, she had to protect her baby. "Okay," she said, her voice breaking. "Okay, I'm getting out. Please, I'm cooperating. I just need to get to a hospital after this." She opened her door slowly, carefully, and began to step out. But as she did, another contraction hit, the strongest one yet, and her legs buckled slightly. She grabbed the doorframe to steady herself, and a cry of pain escaped her lips. Martinez saw a woman making sudden movements, grabbing for the doorframe, potentially grabbing for something to use as a weapon or to flee. Her training about officer safety, about suspects making unexpected movements, about maintaining control of the situation, all of it fired at once in her brain. She grabbed Dr. Johnson's arm roughly and pulled her away from the vehicle. Dr. Johnson stumbled, still in the grip of the contraction, still trying to protect her belly, even as she was being manhandled. "Please, the baby! Be careful, please!" Dr. Johnson cried out. "Hands behind your back," Martinez commanded, reaching for her handcuffs. "You're under arrest for obstruction and resisting an officer." "What?" Dr. Johnson gasped, tears streaming down her face now, pain and terror mixing. "No, I didn't resist. I'm having a baby. Please, God, please." Martinez pulled Dr. Johnson's hands behind her back. The movement was rough, without care for the pregnant woman's condition, without recognition of the medical emergency unfolding. As Martinez snapped the handcuffs onto Dr. Johnson's wrists, Dr. Johnson felt something wet between her legs, warm liquid running down her thighs. Her water had broken. "My water just broke," she said, her voice now barely a whisper, shock and pain stealing her ability to speak loudly. "Oh God, my water broke. The baby is coming. Please, please."
Martinez either didn't hear or didn't care. She was calling into a radio now, reporting that she had someone in custody for obstruction and resisting an officer, requesting a supervisor to the scene as per protocol for arrests. Dr. Johnson stood handcuffed on the side of the road, amniotic fluid soaking her scrubs, contractions coming faster now, maybe 3 minutes apart, her baby coming too early, too fast, and no way to get help. She had never felt so helpless, so terrified, so utterly abandoned by the very systems that were supposed to protect and serve. The body camera recorded all of it, the handcuffs clicking shut, the wet stain spreading on Dr. Johnson's scrubs, her quiet sobs, her whispered prayers, Martinez's radio call, the red and blue lights continuing to flash in the dark night. And then, headlights appeared in the distance, another police vehicle approaching, the supervisor, responding to Martinez's call. Sergeant Lisa Chen was 46 years old, a 22-year veteran of the Detroit Police Department, and someone who believed deeply in community policing, in treating every citizen with dignity, in de-escalation, in actually serving the community rather than just enforcing against it.
She had spent the past 5 years working specifically on improving police-community relations, teaching training courses on implicit bias, and trying to change the culture of the department, one officer at a time. She had met Dr. Amara Johnson 3 months earlier at a community health and safety event that the police department and Detroit General Hospital had co-hosted. They'd spent an hour talking about ways to improve emergency response coordination, about how police could better handle mental health crises, about how medical professionals and law enforcement could work together more effectively. She had liked Dr. Johnson immediately, found her smart, compassionate, dedicated to her community, and very obviously pregnant even then at 6 months. As Sergeant Chen pulled up to the scene, she could see Officer Martinez standing near a vehicle and someone handcuffed a few feet away. As she got closer and her headlights illuminated the scene more clearly, she could see the handcuffed person was a pregnant black woman in scrubs. And then she saw the woman's face, and her blood ran cold. Dr. Johnson, from the hospital, the ER doctor she'd met at the community event, 8 months pregnant, handcuffed, crying, scrubs wet, in obvious distress.
Sergeant Chen got out of her vehicle and walked quickly toward the scene, her face already shifting from routine response to horrified recognition. "Martinez, what's going on here?" Chen asked, her voice carefully controlled but carrying an undertone of concern. Martinez turned, her expression showing the confidence of an officer who believed she'd handled a difficult situation correctly. "Sergeant, traffic stop. Driver was erratic, hazards on, refused to provide documents, became combative when I asked her to exit the vehicle, obstruction and resisting arrest." Chen looked from Martinez to Dr. Johnson, and when their eyes met, Dr. Johnson's face showed recognition and desperate hope. "Dr. Chen," Dr. Johnson said, her voice shaking but trying to be clear. "Please, I'm in premature labor. My water broke. I need to get to the hospital now. Please." Chen's mind was racing. She knew this woman. She knew she was a doctor. She knew she was pregnant, and now she could see the wet stain on her scrubs, could see she was in genuine distress, could see that everything about this situation was wrong, catastrophically wrong. "Dr. Johnson?" Chen said, stepping closer, her voice filled with concern. "Oh my God! Martinez, uncuff her, right now!" Martinez looked confused. "Sergeant, she was resisting." "I said uncuff her now." Chen's voice rose, authority and urgency mixing. "This is Dr. Amara Johnson. She's an ER physician at Detroit General. She's in labor. You just arrested a pregnant doctor having a medical emergency." The color drained from Martinez's face. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her hands fumbled for her handcuff keys. Chen was already on her radio. "Dispatch, this is Sergeant Chen, badge 2847. I need an ambulance to my location immediately. We have a pregnant woman in active labor. Water has broken. Priority 1 medical emergency." As Martinez unlocked the handcuffs with shaking hands, Dr. Johnson's legs gave out and she collapsed. Chen caught her, lowering her carefully to the ground. "How far apart are your contractions?" Chen asked, her training kicking in, her voice calm and professional despite the urgency of the situation. 34 weeks. Too early. Baby's coming too fast. Need hospital. Need NICU." Chen looked up at Martinez, who was standing frozen, the handcuffs dangling from her hand, finally understanding what she had done. "How long was she in cuffs?" Chen demanded. Maybe 10 minutes?" Martinez stammered. 10 minutes. You had a pregnant woman in active labor in cuffs for 10 minutes. Do you understand what you've done?" Chen's voice was low and deadly serious. In the distance, sirens approached. The ambulance was coming. Dr. Johnson was lying on the cold asphalt now, Chen's jacket under her head, another contraction gripping her body. She was trying to stay calm, trying to use her medical knowledge to assess her own situation, but fear was overwhelming her training. 34 weeks, too early, preterm labor, potential complications, NICU required, and she was on the side of the road instead of in a hospital. The ambulance arrived within 5 minutes, though to Dr. Johnson it felt like an eternity. 2 paramedics jumped out, and one of them recognized her immediately. "Dr. Johnson," the paramedic said, shock evident in his voice. "What happened?" "In labor, 34 weeks. Water broke approximately 15 minutes ago. Contractions 2 to 3 minutes apart. Need transport to Detroit General. Need OB team notified. Need NICU prep." The paramedics worked quickly, getting her onto a stretcher, starting an IV, checking her vitals, calling ahead to the hospital. Within 2 minutes, they were loading her into the ambulance. As the ambulance doors closed, Dr. Johnson caught one last glimpse of Officer Martinez standing beside her patrol car, her face pale, her body rigid, watching the ambulance pull away with its lights and sirens active. Sergeant Chen stood beside her, and even from a distance, Dr. Johnson could see Chen was furious. The ambulance ride took 8 minutes. 8 minutes of contractions, of pain, of fear, of paramedics trying to reassure her, while also preparing for the possibility that she might deliver in the ambulance. 8 minutes of thinking about her baby, too small, too early, coming into the world not in the safety of a hospital because a police officer had decided her medical emergency wasn't real. They made it to Detroit General. Her colleagues were waiting. Her OBGYN was there. The NICU team was standing by. They rushed her to a delivery room, and within 30 minutes of arriving at the hospital, Dr. Amara Johnson gave birth to a baby girl. 3 pounds, 12 ounces, breathing on her own, but needing immediate NICU care, alive, fighting, a preemie warrior. They let Dr. Johnson hold her daughter for exactly 90 seconds before the NICU team whisked her away to the neonatal intensive care unit. 90 seconds to look at her tiny face, her impossibly small fingers, her little chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. 90 seconds to fall completely in love and then have to let go. As she lay in the delivery room, exhausted and in shock, her OBGYN sat beside her bed. "Amara, what happened tonight?" Dr. Patricia Williams asked gently. "The paramedics said something about police, about being detained." And Dr. Johnson told her everything, the traffic stop, the contractions, showing her badge and scrubs and explaining the emergency, the officer's refusal to believe her, the order to get out of the car, the handcuffs, standing on the roadside while her water broke, the 10 minutes in custody while in active labor. Dr. Williams's face grew darker with each detail. "She handcuffed you while you were in labor, in hospital scrubs with your badge visible?" Dr. Johnson said, tears streaming down her face. "She didn't believe me. I told her I was a doctor. I showed her my badge. I was wearing scrubs and a stethoscope. I was obviously pregnant, and she didn't believe me. She thought I was faking. She arrested me."
Dr. Williams was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was steel. "We're reporting this to the hospital administration, to the police department, to everyone. What happened to you tonight was not just wrong. It endangered your life and your baby's life. That officer needs to be held accountable." Back at the scene of the traffic stop, Sergeant Chen was dealing with Officer Martinez. The body camera footage was still recording, capturing every word of their conversation. "Martinez, what were you thinking?" Chen said, her voice low but furious. "She was in hospital scrubs. She had a stethoscope around her neck. She had a hospital ID badge. She was visibly pregnant. She told you she was in labor. What part of that seemed like someone you needed to arrest?" Martinez was shaking now, the reality of what she'd done finally sinking in. "She wasn't cooperating. She was acting erratic. I thought she was faking the pregnancy thing to get out of the stop." "Faking pregnancy?" Chen's voice rose. "Martinez, she's 8 months pregnant. You can't fake that. And even if you had doubts, your response to a woman claiming a medical emergency is to call an ambulance and verify, not to handcuff her." I didn't think," Martinez stammered. "No, you didn't think," Chen cut her off. "You made assumptions, and those assumptions were based on what? Her race? Because I guarantee you, if that had been a white woman in scrubs telling you she was in labor, you would have called an ambulance immediately." Martinez opened her mouth to protest, but Chen held up a hand. Don't. Just don't. We're going back to the station right now. You're writing a complete incident report, and then we're reviewing your body cam footage together. And then I'm forwarding all of this to Internal Affairs, because what you did tonight wasn't just poor judgment, Martinez. It was a violation of that woman's civil rights. It was racial bias in action, and it endangered a life. 2 lives. The drive back to the station was silent. Martinez's mind was reeling, replaying the encounter, seeing it now through different eyes. The scrubs, the badge, the stethoscope, the pregnant belly, the wet stain on her scrubs after her water broke. Oh God, her water had broken while she was in handcuffs, and Martinez had done nothing. At the station, Martinez wrote her incident report with shaking hands. She tried to phrase things in a way that made her actions seem reasonable, seem justified, seem like proper procedure. But even as she wrote, she knew how it would read. She knew what the body camera footage would show. She had arrested a pregnant doctor in active labor because she didn't believe her medical emergency was real. The next morning, the hospital administration at Detroit General was in an emergency meeting. Dr. Johnson's case had been reported up the chain immediately, and the hospital's legal team, patient advocacy team, and executive leadership were all present. We have one of our own physicians who was detained and handcuffed by police while in active premature labor in full hospital attire with visible identification after clearly communicating her medical emergency, the hospital CEO said, his voice tight with anger. This isn't just an individual incident. This is a civil rights violation. This is medical negligence by law enforcement. This is racial profiling, and we have a responsibility to support Dr. Johnson fully. The hospital's legal team was already preparing documentation. The patient advocacy team was coordinating support services for Dr. Johnson, and the CEO was preparing to make calls to the police commissioner and the mayor's office. Dr. Johnson's story spread through the hospital within hours. Her colleagues in the ER were outraged. Nurses who'd worked with her for years were in tears. Other doctors were calling lawyers. The hospital staff who'd been at that community policing event 3 months ago, who'd talked to Sergeant Chen and talked about building bridges between healthcare and law enforcement, they felt betrayed. In the NICU, Dr. Johnson sat beside her daughter's isolate, watching monitors, watching the tiny chest rise and fall, watching her little girl fight to grow stronger. The baby was doing well for a 34-weeker, breathing independently, maintaining body temperature, taking small amounts of milk through a feeding tube. But she'd be in the NICU for weeks, maybe a month or more, until she was strong enough to go home. And Dr. Johnson sat there, processing trauma layered on top of trauma. The premature birth, the fear for her baby's health, the violation of being handcuffed while in labor, the helplessness of standing on a roadside while her water broke, unable to get help because an officer decided her medical emergency wasn't real. She couldn't stop replaying it in her mind. What if the ambulance had taken longer? What if she'd delivered on the side of the road? What if something had gone wrong with the baby because of the delay? What if? What if? What if? Her husband Marcus had flown home immediately, arriving at the hospital 6 hours after the birth. He'd held her while she cried. He'd looked at their tiny daughter and cried himself. And then he'd said quietly but firmly, "We're getting a lawyer. We're filing charges. She can't do this to people. She can't do this to you." Within 48 hours, Dr. Johnson had filed a formal complaint with the Detroit Police Department's Internal Affairs Division. She'd also filed a complaint with the Michigan Civil Rights Commission and contacted the ACLU. And her lawyer, a civil rights attorney who'd handled police misconduct cases for 15 years, was preparing a federal lawsuit under Section 1983 for deprivation of constitutional rights under color of law. But the most damning evidence wasn't any statement or testimony. It was Martinez's own body cam footage.
The Internal Affairs investigation moved faster than usual because the body camera footage left no room for ambiguity. The investigators watched it over and over, and each time they watched, they found it harder to believe that an officer with 12 years of experience could make such catastrophically poor decisions. The footage showed Dr. Johnson in hospital scrubs with a visible stethoscope and hospital badge. It showed her clearly explaining she was in premature labor. It showed her visible pregnancy. It showed her trying to comply with Martinez's demands despite being in obvious medical distress. It showed her water breaking while in handcuffs. It showed everything. And it showed Martinez dismissing every piece of evidence, every explanation, every sign of a genuine medical emergency. It showed bias in action. The Internal Affairs report was completed in 10 days. Its conclusion was unequivocal. Officer Valentina Martinez had violated department policy. She had failed to recognize a medical emergency. She had failed to call for medical assistance when requested. She had failed to show duty of care. She had used arrest powers inappropriately. And her actions displayed clear evidence of racial bias in her decision-making. The recommendation was immediate termination. The Detroit Police Commissioner reviewed the case personally. He watched the body camera footage, he read the Internal Affairs report, he read Dr. Johnson's complaint. He spoke with Sergeant Chen, who provided additional context about Martinez's history of complaints from minority communities, complaints that had been dismissed or resulted in minor disciplinary actions but never addressed the pattern. 2 weeks after the incident, Officer Valentina Martinez was called into a meeting with the commissioner, her union representative, and the head of Internal Affairs. She was terminated from the Detroit Police Department effective immediately. Her badge and service weapon were confiscated. Her access to department systems was revoked. Her 12-year career was over. The termination letter cited violation of department policies, failure to provide duty of care, inappropriate use of arrest powers, and evidence of racially biased decision-making. It noted that her actions had endangered the life of a citizen and created significant liability for the department. The story made local news within days. Detroit police officer fired after arresting pregnant ER doctor in labor, read the headlines. The body camera footage, with faces redacted, was released to media and went viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments, outrage from medical communities, demands for accountability from civil rights organizations. Dr. Johnson's lawsuit against Officer Martinez and the Detroit Police Department moved forward. The city's legal team, recognizing that the body camera footage made their position indefensible, entered settlement negotiations quickly. They knew that if this case went to trial, a jury would award significant damages. A pregnant black doctor in hospital scrubs, handcuffed during labor by an officer who ignored her medical emergency. Any jury would see this as exactly what it was. The settlement was reached 4 months after the incident. The amount was not publicly disclosed per the agreement, but legal observers estimated it was in the range of $7 to $8 million. The settlement included a written apology from the Detroit Police Department, a commitment to additional training on implicit bias and medical emergency recognition, and a requirement that Martinez's body camera footage be used in police training programs as an example of what not to do. Dr. Johnson used a portion of the settlement to establish the Emergency Healthcare Workers Legal Defense Fund, providing legal support and advocacy for healthcare workers who face discrimination or mistreatment while performing their duties. She wanted something good to come from her trauma. Her daughter, whom she and Marcus named Hope, spent 38 days in the NICU before coming home. She thrived, growing stronger each day, meeting her milestones, showing no lasting effects from her premature arrival. Every time Dr. Johnson looked at her daughter, she felt grateful that things hadn't been worse, and angry that they'd been as bad as they were. Dr. Johnson returned to work in the emergency department 6 months after giving birth. Her colleagues welcomed her back with support and solidarity, but she was different now. The experience had changed her. She saw her patients differently, especially those who came in via police custody.
She knew firsthand how easily people could be dismissed, how bias could override evidence, how vulnerable people were in the hands of those with power. She started teaching at the hospital's residency program, incorporating lessons about patient advocacy, about recognizing bias in healthcare settings, about the importance of believing patients and treating them with dignity regardless of circumstances. Her story became a teaching case, discussed in medical schools and nursing programs, alongside discussions of racism in healthcare. For Sergeant Lisa Chen, the incident was both vindication and frustration. Vindication because it proved what she'd been saying for years about the need for better training on implicit bias. Frustration because it had taken something this egregious, this documented, this public, to finally result in accountability. She continued her work on police-community relations, but now she used Martinez's body camera footage in every training session she taught. "This is what bias looks like in action," she would tell the officers. "This is what happens when you make assumptions instead of assessing the actual situation in front of you." This officer had every piece of evidence she needed to recognize a medical emergency, and she ignored it all. Why? Because her bias told her that a black woman claiming an emergency was probably lying.
The footage became required viewing for every officer in the Detroit Police Department. It was uncomfortable. It was stark. It was impossible to watch without recognizing the mistakes. And that was exactly the point. Officer Valentina Martinez, after her termination, found it impossible to find work in law enforcement. Her termination for racial bias was a permanent mark on her record. She couldn't get hired by other departments. She couldn't work in security. She ended up working in retail, a dramatic fall from her career in policing. In private moments, she would replay that night in her mind. She'd see Dr. Johnson's face, the pain and fear and desperation. She'd see the hospital badge she'd barely glanced at. She'd see the scrubs, the stethoscope, the pregnant belly. She'd see all the evidence she'd ignored because her bias told her it was fake. She'd think about the moment when Sergeant Chen arrived and recognized Dr. Johnson, the moment when Martinez realized she'd arrested someone who was exactly who they said they were, the moment of pure horror when she understood what she'd done. Some nights she wished she could apologize to Dr. Johnson, but she knew an apology would be meaningless. You can't apologize for handcuffing a woman in labor. You can't apologize for ignoring a medical emergency. You can't apologize for letting your racism override your basic humanity. The only thing she could do was live with it, with the knowledge that she'd harmed someone who was vulnerable and seeking help, with the knowledge that she'd endangered a life, with the knowledge that her biases had destroyed not just her own career, but potentially traumatized a mother and child. Justice came swiftly in this case, but only because of the body camera footage. Without that video evidence, it would have been Dr. Johnson's word against Martinez's. And in that scenario, who would have been believed? The officer with 12 years of experience, or the black woman claiming she was mistreated? The body camera that Martinez thought would protect her instead became the instrument of accountability. The little red light recorded everything, and this time the evidence was undeniable. For Dr. Amara Johnson, healing came slowly. The physical recovery from childbirth was straightforward. The emotional recovery from trauma was ongoing. She had nightmares about being handcuffed. She had flashbacks when she saw police cars. She had moments of rage at the injustice of it all. But she also had hope. Her daughter, growing stronger and healthier every day. Her daughter who would grow up knowing that her mother fought for justice, not just for herself, but for others. Her daughter who would be raised to stand up for what's right, to speak truth to power, to believe in herself even when others don't believe her. And Dr. Johnson had her work, her patients, her colleagues, her advocacy, her teaching,
her mission to make sure that what happened to her would happen to fewer people in the future. The story of that February night became part of the ongoing conversation about police accountability, racial bias, and the importance of listening to people when they tell you about their experiences. It became a case study in law schools, medical schools, police academies. It became a reminder that bias has real consequences, that assumptions can be deadly, that evidence should matter more than prejudice. And it became a testament to the power of documentation. The body camera, that small device blinking steadily on Officer Martinez's chest, recording everything, the evidence that couldn't be disputed, the truth that couldn't be denied. Officer Martinez believed that camera would vindicate her. Instead, it ended her career. Because sometimes when you record everything, what you capture is your own failure, your own bias, your own catastrophic mistakes. The red light blinked, the camera didn't lie, and justice, for once, was swift.